Then some things like your career, you can't just, walk out and not have a paycheck.
Oh, I mean, you can. Just may
And
not be recommended.
you could. You definitely could. That would be something I would do. But hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Creating Success in the Mess podcast. And today we are going to talk about how to make the decision and decide what it is that you can do that feels good to you whenever the job, the career, the time, however you're making your money isn't serving you anymore.
As always, we are your hosts, Cory and Whitney. And in our life, everything is a mess before it becomes
Like
a success. And we're currently in our shop recording this. And so as you see behind us, we got our messy furniture, we're finishing stuff, and an old piece of furniture that will eventually get done. So if you follow along with us long enough, you're going to not see that piece back there anymore. But we want to be a light for others and let you know that, hey, if you got something that is on your heart and you feel like you should do, just start taking steps towards that thing.
Right. So one of the questions we get asked so often is, how did you decide what business you could start? We weren't always entrepreneurs. We weren't always business owners. Like, we did the expected thing that we all were told to do, which was go to college so you can get a good paying job.
And I mean, and realistically, what we want to really speak to here is that, like, this could just be like if you're in a rut. It doesn't necessarily mean like you have to go out and start a company or start a business or be an entrepreneur. Maybe you're wanting a promotion to a certain job where you work because the one that you're currently doing that you're tasked with, you're just not really feeling the flow there anymore. And you're like, what else can I do in this company that's going to serve me so I can serve it?
Yeah. The worst place to be is in the place of where you don't want to be, where you feel like you are just showing up and living in this world rather than actually getting to live life. That is the most miserable place that I have found myself in. And I don't think that we are put here or really, I mean, I think society maybe told us we were expected to do things this way, but I don't think that we are actually expected to just clock in and serve somebody else. I think that there's true value in serving ourselves and allowing ourselves to get to do things we want to do. And I think that the power comes in when, one, we recognize that we have the ability and that we are actually allowed to get to do what we want to do. And then taking the action towards doing what we want to do, regardless of what the expected opinion or perfect, correct route of going about it was. So what was your expected, perfect, do it right route in life? Like, what did you initially set out doing?
So really, I kind of like have flopped around. So like I can remember like when I was younger, like I mean, I think I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always had these ideas, and like when you're like a kid, like you can't just like go get a job. So you're essentially forced to, if you want to make some money, you got to find something to do. And I think one of the earliest things I had done was lawn mowing. Like just my neighbors had lawns that they didn't obviously want to mow because the grass was high. And I was like, hey, $20. And like, I'll literally mow this for you. And I would use like my dad's lawnmower and I would make some money and whatnot. And kind of like turn it into like a side hustle, like business and whatnot. And I was like, wow, as a kid, I was over here like just living the dream. I kind of felt like I was able to like make some money. And of course, terrible spending habits too, because all I did was buy candy bars and soda pop with it. So whatever I made, the convenience store down on the corner received all my profits. I had nothing left. But regardless, what it was is I was happy. And I felt like I was doing something that was serving me and I was making my own choices. But once we got into high school, I essentially felt like it was the college route. They were like, if you're going to get out of small town USA, like you're going to make a difference in the world, go get that college degree. And I navigated into the education field and I went into that essentially clock in, clock out mentality. And in the beginning, it was good because I really felt like, I'm making a difference. Like I really felt like there were so many teenagers that just really need some mentoring, and so I really felt like, hey, this is good, this is serving, and that's kind of what I focused on in the career. But when we were starting our family, there was more funds that were needed.
Yeah.
For every kid that came along, it was like I need my pay scale to come along as well.
Right.
And so I started thinking like, although I'm serving and that's nice and everything, I felt like I was capped.
Yeah.
I couldn't just like walk into like the office and be like, I'm gonna have a $10,000 raise, or like I can't do this.
Right.
But then I was caught between two things of like, well, hold on, like I'm doing my dream. I mean, like being a high school teacher, I mean, that's nice. Like you're really helping bring along teenagers and mentoring them. But then on the flip side, it was like at home, I was like, this isn't working.
Right.
This isn't happening. And so then that's when I think I started looking at, well, what can we do to make supplemental income to make differences meeting? I was kind of like really caught on a fence of like, I feel like I'm doing good, but like I'm not providing enough for the
Right.
family. And so it's kind of like, as a man, I'm over here kind of like, you got to provide, you got to make it happen. I feel like society puts such a pressure on men. I feel this way, that you have to provide. And like literally people are like, well, if you ain't providing, you better go find a better paying job. You're just going to have to sell insurance or something. And it's kind of like, but I don't want to sell insurance. Like I don't get passion like doing that. I want to be able to do something that I want to do that I think feels great.
Right.
But then also like make an income. And I wasn't getting that clocking in. It wasn't happening. It wasn't working for me. And so even in my field of education, your upgrade was becoming a principal. And I was like, I do not want to do that. I mean, sit here and just like deal with discipline all day and then doing teacher evaluations. No, I was like, so that's not going to happen. And so business was the way I went. And when we started getting into business, which you were in business before I was, so it took me, I was behind.
Right.
Well, I was where I was.
You were right on time.
I was right on time where I was. Because everything circumstance in your life has a purpose for it. And so at the time I was really, when I started really getting into business and feeling what entrepreneurship was and discovering the bits of freedom that were coming with it, and then foreseeing like what full freedom could be, I was like, man, like I literally feel like I am like 8 years old again and I am mowing lawns, and it was like, this feels good. And so for me personally, entrepreneurship was great. I could not find the workplace advancement that would also feel what I wanted. If there would have been other options available to me, I could have made it work in my current workplace in my career field that I had chose out of college. But I didn't. And I literally went into something I didn't have a college degree for. Now I sit back and go, man, why did I get a college degree? It's kind of like I'm not even using it, but I did use it and it got me where I am. But I really feel like my true self, who I am, what I want personally to adapt for my own life, really came from me personally in entrepreneurship.
So when you were a kid, you had, freedom from like the pressure of making a career that makes a certain amount of money. And you found yourself always like attracted to like the entrepreneur route. And then you went and did what society expected you to do in picking a defined career and getting a degree in their defined career path. And then you found you picked that career path. You picked out of their little box of choices based on which one felt like it offered the option of whatever it was that you kind of like internally really wanted. And that was education. That was helping, kids.
It became that way. It wasn't that way in the beginning. Sometimes in a way I almost like picked education because it was like, well, I've been 12 years, I've seen this done.
Right.
And I'm going to say I was a little bit confused because I had other majors I had picked, and then like things just kind of started feeling off. And so I ended up, I'm going to
You went to what was familiar.
I went with what was familiar.
Right.
And I went through with it. And I think the first time I went into a classroom and did like a field, we called them field experiences, which was, you were just essentially a free teacher. But the first time I kind of went in and I helped a few kids, I kind of felt like, okay, no, I could do this. This would work. But we didn't have kids yet. And
Mhm.
so I didn't realize, at the time, it was like, well, this amount of money would be just fine.
Right.
And so, yeah, definitely navigated my untrue self into a field that I just kind of felt like society said
Wait,
we're all
what
supposed to
when
do.
you say your untrue self, can you explain what that is?
So I started listening more to what I think systems told me I needed to be to become successful, because I definitely was a high achiever. And so I kind of felt like, I wanted to have this showcase that I was a successful individual, that I was able to make it out of a small town, go to a big city, and just be kind of like some kind of a big name. Like that's kind of what I started reaching for
Mhm.
in adolescence and becoming like, a teenager and becoming a young adult. And I felt like the only way that I was even allowed to do that was to go to college. I mean, I can't even think of like another way.
Right.
I really literally felt like, okay, well, people who go to college are successful people. So in order to be successful, I have to go to college. And it wasn't like I get to go, or
Mhm.
like, oh, meteorology, like my life's dream. Like I'm definitely going to do that. And no matter what, nothing's going to stop me. It wasn't. It was almost just kind of like I had to go. Like I had to apply for institutions. I had to find a place to get accepted to, and I had to enroll in these classes. It wasn't like, although I made the choice overall, in a way, I kind of felt like I didn't actually have the choice, because the pressure that society kind of put on me, and I didn't know it at the time. I didn't realize I was being pressured, but looking back on
Mhm.
it now, I was like, that's exactly what it was.
Mhm.
We were funneled into another educational institution to fill some kind of a gap somewhere that needed to be done, regardless of what I actually wanted to do within my true self. So when I say true self, because I guess I do need to answer the question here, it is back to that 8-year-old that was literally getting a lawnmower and mowing a lawn. He saw a need and a problem and had confidence and felt worth of fixing the problem
Right.
for somebody. And what happened was energy was transferred, and energy became income. And the income gave me something I could do whatever I want and
Mhm.
have all my own choices. And so if Diet Pepsis and Reese's peanut butter cups is what I want my energy to go to, that's what it went to. And I don't have any second thoughts on it. I don't have any regrets.
Mhm.
Um, you know, those choices were what I wanted and were not pressured on me.
Right.
And so I felt like getting out of the education system, I felt like I was going back to a younger part of me
Mhm. So
that
that's what
felt
you're
more
calling
correct.
your true self.
That's what I really, yeah, that's what I would go into what I call my true self.
Mhm. And so when you were in that education system, or what the career path that you chose, you didn't necessarily, did you feel like you even had the energy to like put into to be able to go get like um ding dongs and Twinkies, or a vacation to Belize, or did you feel like in that system that you were in that you even had the energy and the resources coming back to even be able to go do whatever it was that you wanted to do? Or
So like when I was working my post college job, you mean?
yeah, when you were a teacher.
Yeah. So, like I said, in the beginning, it was a little bit more passion driven. And passion's important, but when you start getting like, I mean, we had bills to pay. I
Mhm.
mean, and the job had a set salary, and you get what you got. I mean, there was not much of like negotiating like what your pay was going to be in the system that I was in. And so I really kind of felt like
So
I felt like I was working in order to pay for mortgages, car payments, electrics, lights, and clothing for kids,
right.
and not necessarily like something that I would have wanted, like a trip to go see the Grand. I mean, I was teaching a class about the Grand Canyon and different places around the country and geography, and I hadn't even seen any of it,
Mhm.
nor could I even like say, hey, this Christmas break, while you guys are here not doing school, I'm going to be going and seeing this place, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it when we get back in January. It wasn't even an option.
Right.
It wasn't even a possibility. It was
Mhm.
like, how am I sitting here teaching about a place and how great it is directly from 4 or 5 photos that I've seen out of the textbook?
Right.
And it just felt like this is so unauthentic
Mhm.
to who I am and how this actually should be.
Mhm. And so, like, I mean, I watched this story go down. So I have like,
Yeah, you were in the house.
I have a viewpoint that is not necessarily like your viewpoint. I felt like you had a complete loss of energy. I feel like you had a complete loss of passion, and everything became so systematic to like you have I have to grade. I have to get another job. I have to sign up for this extra committee because it's going to pay me $200 extra for the year. I have to go to this. Like, it became a lot of like, I have to. And by the time you got home, you were like needing a nap on the couch, which is just, I mean, it's just not you. Like, you're just like, you've always been really high energy.
Yeah.
And so like, at first I was like, what in the world, like, is going on in the daytime that could be making you so like exhausted and constricted? And like, I mean, are you literally just like running a marathon around the classroom? And like, that wasn't it. What it was like, you literally were so confined and so controlled and so like just out of pure flow and out of just like, you know, having that freedom to be able to honor like your true self in you, that you were at an energy like block, like an energy crash. And no matter what, it was really difficult for you to access any energy. So even if the funds had been there, I mean, even if this had paid like good money, and or we didn't have, you know, multiple young babies at one time, then I don't think you would have had the energy to go on a trip to Belize or you know, whatever. Like, you literally
wouldn't have been enjoyable.
You were so just depleted from running this rat race that you had got into.
And entrepreneurship is tiring too.
Yeah, no, there's
but it's a different kind of tired.
There's a total difference between like tired and hard work and an energy drain. Yes.
That's what it was. It was like every time I would clock in, the vacuum would turn on. And then when I clocked out, there was nothing left but impatience, attitude, frustration, anger. And so what was most important to our life wasn't getting first priority at all. And the reason why is because I wasn't putting my own self-worth as a priority. I was putting a system, I was putting a place, I was putting other people's kids of more importance than what I had going on, even for me. What's the one thing that you get so irritated about? It's like, now that I'm not, you're like, we're like, oh, where's this going to go?
One thing?
I know the answer, but like, obviously, because I'm bringing it up.
Let's see if I can get it right.
Quiz time. But in the morning, now that we are entrepreneurs, now that we kind of call our own shots as best as possible, but now, what is it that is so irritating to you in the morning time when we're all up and trying to leave?
Well, okay. Well, first off, now you are the last one up, usually, and that is a different change. Two, like, once we are all up, I think is what your question was.
Yeah.
The most irritating thing is that you like have us like rushing around, like we got to get somewhere, like to clock in before the man gets to us. Like, I mean, we're all like in this like rat race. I mean, it can be Saturday morning and it's like everybody's got to get up, get dressed, like get going, like get out the door. And I'm like, who's coming to get us? Like, it's Saturday morning and like we own our business. If we want to go open the door, we go open the door. If we don't want to go like outside and start working right now, like, who's coming to get us? Like, that is that the right answer?
No, that's the right answer. It's exactly what I'm looking for. And it really is like, you know, when you're going to get out, there is still struggles because the system has essentially trained us. And, you know, you talked about, I want you to talk about this routine. I kind of developed myself in thinking that routines were great things.
I think that's what we were taught.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely think that's what we were taught. And I definitely think that they used to teach, for sure, to our parents and stuff, that like you needed to set a routine because that provided security, stability for the children that were being, you know, raised and grown and whatever. And I do think that I think that a lot of parents followed that and instilled the fact of needing a routine furthers that. Like you go to school at a certain time and you eat lunch at a certain time and you get out of school at a certain time, and then you have
There's bells.
afternoon snack at a certain time, and then you go to bed at a certain time. I mean, like everything in life, like from grade school, like, you know, I mean, from being a baby and you got to have your baby down to bed at a certain time. I think that like routine and schedule has been pushed so hard that it has developed this idea and this thought pattern that you need to have routine and schedule in order to have success, health, happiness, security, stability. And I personally just think that's a lie. I mean, there is, my kids do have like bedtimes. Like there are places that routine needs to happen. And schedules need to be like, you can't like just live like, you know, without a schedule. I find that'd be so odd, because
it's not all vacation.
Right. I mean, there are places and times where that needs to happen, and there are places and time where that needs to be instilled in order to like provide some with stability and security. There of course are a million things. Like I understand the importance of it in some places. I just think that it was kind of taken a little too far, and pushed a little too hard. I don't think that we have to live by a clock, and I don't think that we have to do a routine every day. I think that's dangerous territory, and I think that's what set us, a lot of us, up for getting stuck in ruts, essentially, and getting confused and having a loss. Because like if you have lived by such a schedule and such a routine, and you do find yourself stuck in a rut, because that's what happens. Like when creativity does not happen in routine. Creativity happens outside of routine.
That's so good.
And in order to have success or growth or you know, happiness or anything new, you had to have creativity. And I'm not talking about like, you know, grabbing the paint and painting on it. I'm talking about creativity as in like newness, a change, something different. And that can show up as in like, you know, this morning, I'm not gonna go be in, you know, at this place at 8 a.m. and I'm not gonna take a left turn. Instead, I'm gonna take a right turn. And then I'm gonna stop at that store over there, and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna check it out. And then I'm gonna go X, Y, and Z. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna open my store and get my stuff done. You know, like, no, I get that you have business hours and you need to honor that. Like I said, there's a place and a time for that. But when you take a right turn instead of a left turn, or when you decide to go visit this place instead of that, then new thoughts, new patterns, new ideas, new interactions, new things pop up in your day that would not have popped up before had you stayed in your routine and in your pattern. So at that point, now you have opened the door for creativity, for something new. And so a lot of times I think like we are auto-tuned to think that we need routine and we need schedule and we need punctuality and all of these things that has been taught to us. But then we get discontent there, and then we don't know how to get out of it. And so the number one way of getting out of it, getting out of stuckness and getting out of that, is get out of a routine in some way. Do something different. Take the right turn, not the left turn. Stop at that store on your way home instead of just going straight home. Like go, you know, chat with that person when you never would have chat with that person, or, you know, try painting on a canvas when you've never picked up the paint before. I mean, like just there are ways to get creative all the time. And I think like we need to get out of routine in order to spark change.
Everything you said is like so good. And the main theme of what I hear you saying is like, be open to flow.
Yes.
And flow, like if you think of a water faucet, what has to happen for flow of water? You have to open those handles and allow flow to occur through pipes.
Right.
And I can remember you had mentors and you had mindset coaches and you were part of the programs, and I wasn't really participating, but I was listening. And so I'm absorbing some information. And of course I'm seeing you take action in these things like, wow, holy crap. Like, look at you. Like, you're living great. I'm stuck in a classroom. This is awful. And I can remember, like, as I began to absorb your action taking and feeling a little bit inspired, one of the things they taught us as teachers was bell to bell.
Mhm.
Like, if you can teach bell to bell, then you're considered A plus.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, that's bull crap, because you put yourself back in the classroom. Do you want to be doing something from bell to bell, walk 5 minutes to another classroom and go bell to bell? That's exhausting in itself. And kids, no one as a whole learns that way. And something I started adopting in my classroom that my students greatly appreciated was, I said, look, sometime around the last 5 minutes of class, you're no longer with me. I'm going to give you time, 5 minutes, do whatever you want to. Within safety protocols, do whatever you want. And sometimes we would have 4 minutes and sometimes we'd have 7. But the kids knew that whatever it was we were doing in class that day, they would have around 5 minutes where they would be able to collect themselves, do whatever. And it was, let me tell you, the experiment was awesome. And this, but the last 2.5, 3 years of me teaching in the classroom, I started doing this. Here's what I saw. Some kids would pull out the next class that they had homework due for, and they'd finish their homework right before they got to class. I know some people are kind of like, they should have had done the night before. It doesn't matter. That they got it done. And what it was is they found an opportunity. They found a space where they could quickly focus, knock something out before it was due. The other teacher never knew, and should they even care how that kid got it done? It got done, because in our jobs or in your business, sometimes getting a C is going to be just fine. Some kids, they socialize with their friends. Some just put headphones in, relaxed. Some students would just study for an exam. I mean, they did all these different things. I had some students, they would get their sketchbooks out and they would draw. But what was happening was they were given freedom in a space to think outside the box, to do something different than what was required by a system.
Right.
And the appreciation that students had for it, it just, when we did do work, kids bought in, because they knew that there was going to be a respect level that allowed them to have a moment of time for themselves between going into another class. And what it was is they were getting something different than what was a routine.
Right.
And because they weren't getting another routine, they were allowed to pull their true selves out and identify things, or even just come to even me and have a more one-on-one mentor session to ask a question or to get clarification on something. And oftentimes it had nothing to do with what we talked about in class. It was about something to do with their life.
Right. Now, you left the classroom and you went into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
We have more than one business now because that's how we roll, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Why do one when you can do many?
That's my theory. So we have more than one business. And so you still have responsibilities. It's not like you don't have like responsibilities and some things that demand your time or whatever. Leaving the classroom didn't eliminate all of that. Like, what did it give you though, leaving the classroom and doing your own businesses, even though that they have restrictions and they have requirements? What would you say is the difference in between the two? Because sometimes I think people think like being your own boss is so easy and having your own business is so easy, and you can call the shots or whatever, and there are restrictions and there are some things that don't feel like freedom. But what exactly would to you is the difference?
So I'm going to talk about my first challenge that I had leaving a classroom. In the classroom, I had bodies that came into a room, and then I had a space to discuss, to teach, to learn. I created an environment, but I didn't have to seek out individuals to invite them to my environment. The system essentially pushed them in by the bells.
Right.
And they were essentially required to be in my space for a certain period of time. And I just had to develop what I do now. In business, it was a shift of like, okay, I still want to have this space, of whatever it is I do, whether it's a refinishing skill, being able to take someone's something and refinish it, make it new again, whether it's doing a mindset growth session with somebody. I have a space
Mhm.
that I want to be my true self, but I was having to go out and find people to come to my space. It
Mhm.
wasn't like the school system where like the people were just coming in. I can even think back like when we met in retail.
Mhm.
We didn't run around the parking lot dragging people into our retail store to
We didn't.
buy.
There was somebody
There
that
was
was
somebody that
doing
did
that.
it,
Yeah.
but we didn't do that.
Right.
We were there to fold sheets and make pillows look pretty and make sure all the right boots and shoes are in the right order, if
Mhm.
you're getting an idea where we worked. But we we had our set responsibilities that were very kind of like one dimensional.
Mhm.
And in entrepreneurship, there were definitely many hats you had to wear at different times.
Mhm.
And so I think it really was very different because in the classroom, I felt like you kind of just had your space and you had like a small like puzzle piece of responsibility. And then the system just kind of takes everyone's puzzle pieces and kind of puts them in. But the problem was you couldn't really get out of your puzzle piece.
Mhm.
And then entrepreneurship, you were trying to create all the puzzle pieces and putting them together and kind of see like how can you make this puzzle work,
Mhm.
if that makes any sense. And so I really kind of feel like it was trying to get a learning curve of doing that, but also not at the same time be stuck in a routine in your
Mhm.
own business to make it kind of feel like you were working a 9 to 5.
Right. So the trick was to take those things that were like responsibilities per se
Mm-hmm.
and make decisions to make them work best for you rather than making um, decisions that you thought everyone else in business made or everyone else had success doing.
Yeah.
The trick was the way you got that freedom in entrepreneurship that you didn't necessarily have
Mm-hmm.
in your 9 to 5 that didn't fulfill you was making sure that you were honoring your true self, like the way that
Yeah.
you do things and the way that works best for you in all of your decision making.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I think the answer is typically the same for anyone who gets into business, or if you're looking at if you find a certain position somewhere, you're like, oh, I really would love to do that position that like right up my alley. Is I think we all want to do what we want to do, but we also know that there's going to be the baggage of restrictions of like responsibilities, and so even going into business, like I mean, you go into business because you kind of want to do what it is you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also other things in your business that you don't necessarily want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest one for me is taxes. I can really.
Ugh,
Oh, is that both of us?
yes. That's why we hire someone.
That's why we hire someone. But we don't want to do it. We don't want to deal with it. I don't understand it.
Mm.
And so I'm in a position where like I either need to understand it enough to do it myself and hopefully I don't like screw it up,
Mhm.
or I just need to like come down to myself and say, this is not me
Right.
at all.
Right.
So I in this situation, I'm going to do my own social media marketing because I actually do kind of think that's fun and I can do it enough and get business. And I'm going to pay someone to do my taxes.
Right.
Someone else may be the opposite. They're
Mhm.
like, no, I'm paying someone to do my marketing. I'll handle my own taxes.
Right.
You know?
And that's the key to business. And that I feel like that's a key to life. Like, and sometimes like we don't have the
Mm-hmm.
option and the
Mm-hmm.
opportunities necessarily to make all of those choices that like are in flow and are aligned with us and what feels best to us or works best to us. Sometimes like when we're stuck in a place that we're not happy with anymore, if we just stop and we look and we're probably going to figure out that it's because we don't have freedom in some way to make something align with us better, or work with us better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is like the biggest sticking point that we face in everything, whether it's our career or raising our kids or whatever. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times I think that we're default set
Yeah.
to go to like what I should do, what is responsible, what is normal, the way that I was told to operate or function or to handle this, instead of looking at it and saying like, like this way doesn't exactly work best for me. Like, okay, we homeschool our 3 kids,
Mhm.
and so I had them in a school, and it was miserable. And not, I mean, not for me. Like, I, had, they went to school
Yeah.
and
We
whatever.
picked them up miserable.
They were
Yeah.
miserable. Like, they had like a load of things that they were struggling with that were not the same things. That and all it was that they weren't given the freedom to be able to adjust and tweak things in ways that work best for them. It's a one size fit all. Like, you do this and you conform, and that's it. And they were really struggling, and so like I made the choice that that just wasn't going to work for them. And so we were going to do something else, and we were going to find a way that worked best for them to grow and learn and live life into their true authentic self.
Yeah.
Was it easy? No.
Mm.
And have we had like a journey throughout, like tweaking? Even after we went to homeschool, we still had to kind of tweak things.
And we're still not done. Like,
No,
it's still,
everything is a growing process. And so I think regardless of where it is in our life, whether it's our career or our business or our parenting or the way we live as individuals, I think that the key is looking to see where we've got stuck in a rut, where we got stuck in a routine, and where it's no longer honoring like our true self, and what could be tweaked or what could just be modified or changed to make it work best for us, to honor our true self, to honor our flow. Because like, if we are not in flow, if we are not doing things in ways that work for us or feel good to us or honor us, then we start sacrificing us and our mission here in this life that we're in, for the sake of someone else's like thoughts and patterns and controls. And that's when we get miserable.
yeah. So can you speak a little bit more though about, because every time you say flow, you hit here. And so can you just
I
take,
didn't recognize that.
yeah, subconscious. But if you could kind of speak a little bit more to what is flow, so people can kind of identify what would be flow within themselves, so they can begin to uncover some things and figure out like, well, how do I tap in the flow? No, I mean, it doesn't matter. This could be, maybe your flow is, I want to parent better. It's I want to be a better sister or a brother to somebody. I want to be more involved in something for my community. Whatever it is, how can you help people tap into flow, by explaining what it is?
Well, I mean, like, there you can research it. I mean, there's a whole lot of different definitions and descriptions of flow. For me, flow is like being able to like do life in ways that I feel like are the best ways and that fit me the best. And so when I personally am not in flow, if I am doing something that someone else wants and I do not really want to do that I am not in flow at that point, because it really doesn't come from like inside of me. It doesn't come from, it's more of like an obligated rather than like I truly genuinely want to. And like this happens all day long, and we make decisions all day long, and we either are choosing to come from a place of flow, which is like internally, like truly aligned with us, or we're making decisions coming from a place that is outside of like flow. And so for me, like my center is like here. I always come from here, and we all make decisions all day long, and sometimes like we make decisions in the moment, not realizing that it's not like truly aligned and our true self, I guess, essentially, isn't necessarily like in it. And then we figure out it's not, because then we start feeling like blocked, and we start feeling frustration, we start feeling all these emotions that start coming, and those are oftentimes the trigger signs of not being in
It's
flow.
like a bad symptoms. Like, so like when you get a cold, you know what the symptoms of a cold
Right.
are,
Mhm.
but when you're out of flow, that also has symptoms as well.
Yeah. So for me, like if I'm focusing too much in here, making decisions or thinking, whatever, then I can almost tell you I'm not going to be like operating out of flow. I have to like really center on making a decision from this point rather than here. And sometimes that means I can't give you an answer right at the second. I have to think about it. And sometimes that means I get into it and then I'm
Yeah.
like, I think we should change this, like, and
Yeah.
which drives you nuts.
So flow is more feeling
Mhm.
than it is like thinking.
For me, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Because anytime you get to your mind and you in your intellect, you are not necessarily operating out of true state. This is where a lot of times we start replaying the program that we have been told, and then we start making decisions out of this program that has been downloaded into us since we were born. And that's when we get off track and we don't necessarily end up in the places that we want to be or should be or could be.
Right. And I know sometimes it's kind of you can't 100% be in flow. You can, but you can't always operate out of flow because like we do have a mind for a reason. So like one thing I like with our kids, and maybe other parents, let us know if this happens to you, but shower time is kind of like a headache. We have 3 and they're always arguing like who has to go first. And of course we have 2 bathrooms. So it's like, well, I get mom and dad's shower. And it's just all this like chaos. And what I've kind of noticed with us is when we've had a day of working out of flow, we can easily in our mind analytically look at the situation and create something that makes that process easier for us and our kids. And then when we had days where we weren't exactly working out of flow, it's a little bit more of like, one of you just get in now. You know what I mean? And it is kind of like, like you're not going to do everything operationally out of flow.
No.
But when you have had a day where you have worked in flow and you have served purpose and you feel like your true self was getting something, it makes those other situations, those things that you have to take care of, it makes it go by so much more smoothly.
Well, I think that back to, like what we initially started this talking about, I think that is the key right there, is like the flow and being able, we weave in and out of like consciousness, subconsciousness, like all day long. Like that's just how the human body works. And so when I think the trick and to getting success and to staying more aligned basically with like what a life, living in life looks like to you opposed to just living in life, I think the trick is whenever you're going weaving in and out of those, that you can stop and recognize like, man, this classroom just really isn't like working with me anymore. Like, how can I adjust and modify so that it feels more in flow and aligned with me? And then sometimes you get to the point where it doesn't. I mean, you just can't. And so you start playing around in other spaces that are, when you are in flow, you are in these places and you start, you start playing there, and then you start figuring out like, this is just so much easier. This just feels so much better. And then before you know it, you're no longer teaching in a classroom, you're running a business. And then the next step in that, like you said, was starting to learn within that capacity and in that space. Man, this marketing just isn't like really feeling that great. And so then you take a tweak and you figure out like, how can I make this marketing work better for me? And then you tweak that, and then you go on, and that's just the way of life. But at the end of the day, you don't feel like you have been sucked dry, or you have extreme misery or frustration or anxiety, or feel like you like have nothing to give, or feel like you have so much to give but you just can't give. I mean, all of that is blocked. And whenever you feel all that blocked energy and all those blocked feelings and all those blocked emotions, the number one thing is to stop and look at, like, where am I not in flow?
Yeah.
What is not really aligning with my true self, and how can I tweak it? Can I tweak it? And then you start making progressive action towards that. And some things you can change immediately. Like some things you can switch immediately. And then some things like your career, you can't just, walk out and not have a paycheck.
Oh, I mean, you can. Just may not be recommended.
You could. You definitely could. That would be something I would do. But anyway, you definitely could do that. But then you just start making smaller shifts of like playing in spaces that feel like flow. And before you know it, that time that you're playing in those spaces just becomes more, and you don't even need the places where you're blocked per se. We're out of alignment.
Yeah. I definitely feel like when you feel the emotional symptoms occurring, I mean, I think for me, because I will ignore them usually, because it requires me to work on myself. And that's something I struggle with, because I'm more of a people pleaser. So I will put people before myself, which is not okay, because I have self-worth and that needs to come first. And so, and people will be more appreciative if you do things out of you wanting and feeling as if it is your flow than doing it because you're getting some kind of pat on the back or gratification for them. But when emotional signals are coming up, I got to think like, all right, what's causing this?
Right.
And so I think the first step for what works for me is I have to recognize why I feel this way. And then from that point, kind of move forward.
We were given emotions for a reason. They are essentially our flags. So they raise up, and then it's our job to look at it and see what is this emotion telling me. And so maybe the emotion is like, I am extremely happy, like grateful and appreciative of this. And maybe the emotion is like, this is really wrong. Regardless, like, we were given emotions for a reason, and they are the fastest and quickest way that we can figure out how to self-correct.
Yeah, very good. Final thoughts?
I think this was a fantastic talk, if I say so myself.
Right. So I agree. It really is kind of diving in, like, it's okay to self-recognize when you're struggling. Everybody does struggle. It's not a weakness point.
No.
It's a signal. And I think we all need to open up and just say, okay, why do I feel a certain way? And it's not always negative. Like sometimes you feel like over emotional in love. I mean, think about like when we were dating, like there were times I was like, oh my gosh, like it's freaking awesome. Like, how lucky am I? Right? How lucky are you? Right. But it's like, we need to recognize why we feel certain ways and then know where that's coming from, mind or heart.
Yep. I think we are so powerful, and I don't think that we recognize that, and I don't think that's something that we have really been taught or told. And I think that as soon as we recognize how powerful we are and how actually capable we are of making life be what we want it to be and do the things that we were sent here to do, and we start acting towards that rather than feeling so powerless and controlled and hopeless. I don't think that is how we are supposed to be or what we are supposed to do here. And it is really as easy as recognizing that we are truly powerful beings that can make our life be what we want when we want it.